going?
Yeah.
I never know.
I know, I'm sorry. I never know what to say. I just panic. Hi, everyone.
Welcome to Historia.
You remember when you used to say, what a beautiful day? What did you say?
It's not a beautiful day because it's freaking hot today.
But you used to say, beautiful day to be alive, right?
Is it, though?
No, but you used to say that all the time.
Well, my mind has changed in the new year.
There's no beautiful days anymore.
No, it's just hot and stressful.
I think you just said, what a day to be alive. So you never actually said what kind of day.
Honestly, I don't remember. My memory is like a goldfish lately.
Oh.
I don't know. Just
Anyway,
welcome to Historia.
Welcome. Sorry, the intros are always a fun time for you. I'm Kylie.
I'm Jamie.
And we are starting off spooky season. Oh, we should have done an intro like spooky spook.
Ooh.
Yeah, like that. Boo. Something like that.
Maybe next week.
Okay.
Oh, I got a spooky one for next week too.
Okay,
Just
good.
wait. So
Okay, good.
I'll scare you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, so welcome to spooky season. Meow, 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 meow. I don't know. There's 4 Sundays in October.
Oh.
So we get 4 fun spooky episodes. Maybe even one in November. I don't know.
Honestly, I say spooky all day long.
Yeah, me too. There's just so many topics to cover. I'm like, I can't pick just 2.
I know when I looked up like things that have happened on Halloween, I thought there would be a lot creepier stuff, but I was like, it was just sad.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I don't really want to do this because it's on Halloween, but like, this is just sad. I want something creepy or something wild.
Yep.
So,
well, today's episode is like creepy, but like not as creepy as I thought because we're actually kind of breaking a lot of the myths that are around it. So it's like scary in points, but
I have an assumption.
what?
Is it the Conjuring house?
No,
Or
which
story?
house is that?
The Conjuring story?
No,
Oh.
I don't think so. I don't think this is the same one.
Oh.
I get like all the stories are so similar, but I don't know what
Literally.
house that is based off of. It is a house that I'm doing.
Oh, I don't know. It was like in the 70s.
Yeah, my house has been around forever and ever.
Oh.
Oh, that one's in Rhode Island.
Oh.
Okay, cool. We're
Where are we located today?
in Louisiana. I'm pretty sure.
I
it's
have
in
an
Louisiana.
assumption. No.
I think, wait, is it Louisiana? Okay, y'all, I did my research till like 1 a.m. So if some of this doesn't make sense, it's because I was falling asleep. And that's on procrastination, TM.
Literally.
But all of my sources today come from a very helpful website, AmericanHauntingsInc.com. I literally got everything from there because they had the whole story of this house. And so shout out to them. Today, I'm going to be talking about one of the most haunted houses in America. I was going to do a foreign one, but then I was like, I kind of want it to hit closer to home a little bit.
Oh, we're going to be in the United States for a bit.
Yeah. And so I'm covering the Myrtles Plantation today.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, I think I heard it on And That's Why We Drink, maybe a couple other podcasts, but it's just when you look up like top 10 scariest places in the world, it's in that list. And it's just really interesting.
I mean, I would like to go to some of these haunted places just for the historical fact of it, like the Lizzie Borden. Just
Yes,
for...
I want to go there so bad. Let's go. Lizzie Borden, we're coming. No, we're not coming for you. Sorry. Let's go to the house. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and there's one too in New Orleans that is Lady someone. God, why can't I think of her name? They based her off of American Horror Story in Coven.
Oh,
Why can't I?
I never
think
watched
of
all of
her
those.
name.
well,
Anyway,
this one's in Francisville, Louisiana.
okay. So
St. Francisville.
Louisiana is just
Scary.
It's just haunted.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm excited for this. We've never done a haunted episode, I don't think. We've done like we've never done like a haunted place, I don't believe.
I don't think so.
So, we're going to throw in some ghost stories. Ooh, get your blanket over your head with your flashlight. Well, I guess I would have the flashlight as I'm talking. Never mind. Okay. Anyway, I'm just going to jump on in.
Wow.
So, like I said, this one is in St. Francisville, Louisiana. It is in the top 10 of the scariest houses in the world, and it is one of the most haunted houses in America. Many people come here to search for ghosts because, you know, who doesn't love to do that, right? And there's been stories that have been told for years and years, some of them not even true. And so we're going to talk about that today. Because, you know, as time goes, stories get changed a little bit. But there is some truth to the ghosts that we see there, but it's just not the story that's been told.
Well, it's like a game of telephone with
Right.
history.
Exactly. So, some things that have been seen at this house, which we'll talk more in detail. Handprints in the mirror. Ooh. Footsteps on the stairs. Ooh. Weird smells. Death by poison.
Not surprised.
Hangings. Oh. Vanishing objects. Murder. And gunfire. Thank you. Thanks for the sound effects.
We don't need sound effects. I'm the sound person.
This is going to be a chaotic episode. I already know it. Very few doubt that it is haunted. So nobody's like, there's barely anyone that's like, this place is not haunted. Because if you stay there, you usually have some kind of interaction. But it's haunted for different reasons than what the guides present. So the history is filled with a lot of death, a lot of tragedy, and a lot of despair. There's a lot of sad stories that have happened at this house, which is the reason why it is so scary and haunted. Let's talk about the history of the house. Constructed by David Bradford, you're going to hear his name a lot, in 1794. Ever since then, it has been the scene of at least 10 murders, as they say. It has actually only been like one, but wow. People say there's been 10 murders there. Only one was actually murdered there, but people who have lived there have passed down the story, like I mentioned. It has a very unusual history with many ghosts to follow. So David Bradford, the one who constructed the house, was one of 5 children born in America to Irish immigrants. In 1777, he purchased the land and a small stone house near Washington County, Pennsylvania. He was a very successful attorney, businessman, and deputy attorney general for the county. He's fancy. He was going to marry a woman, but they ended up calling it off a few days before the wedding. There was no reason why that has ever been stated, but they ended up not getting married. Yeah, I know, right? He later met and married Elizabeth Porter in 1785, and they started a family. Because his business and his family were growing, he knew that they needed a larger home, and so he ended up building one in Washington. I think it's in Pennsylvania. It's a town. Washington, a town. Pennsylvania, I think. So, if there's a Washington, Pennsylvania. It just said the town of Washington. So I was like, I think that's in Pennsylvania. I don't know. Anyway, that this house became well known for its size and amazing craftsmanship. So his name started getting out there because they were like, boy, how'd you make that house? That's gorgeous. And they liked how it had a mahogany staircase and a lot of the wood was imported from England. Ooh. I know, so fancy. Many items inside of it had to be transported from the East Coast, and they had to be brought over the Pennsylvania mountains. So they were like, oh, this is expensive, fancy stuff. He's good at his job. He knows what he's doing. And so he ended up using the parlor of this house as an office to meet with clients. In October 1794, he was forced to flee and had to leave his family behind.
Why?
I don't know.
Probably doing some shady shit.
Just kidding. It was the Whiskey Rebellion.
Oh.
That's why. It's still shady. He was involved with the Whiskey Rebellion, and it was even stated that George Washington placed a price on his head for his role in the affair.
Oh.
Yeah.
So he is a shady man?
Exactly. So if you don't know what the Whiskey Rebellion it was in western Pennsylvania, and it began because of high prices and taxes that were forced on those living in the frontier. They started complaining about the tax of whiskey because they needed something to like push the, change. So the complaints about this issue turned into violence after a mob attacked and burnt down a home of a local tax collector. So the next few months, residents resisted attacks on the whiskey, and most of the protests were nonviolent, but Washington was like, let's send a militia. We're going to suppress this rebellion. So that's what they did. Gotta love it.
I'm surprised we haven't had any rebellions with this inflation.
I know, right? It's very shocking. When the protests were finally under control, Bradford left the region. Some people were just like, you need to get out because like now, I don't know, people aren't going to like you. You kind of ruin your reputation here. And so they just kind of told him to leave. They're like, just go start somewhere else. He's like, okay.
Wow.
And
Get out of my town.
Basically. So then he went to Pittsburgh. He moved there with his family. His family was there in a house in Pittsburgh, nice and safe. And he decided to travel down the Mississippi River and look for a new area to live in. He traveled down the Mississippi River and eventually settled at Bayou Sarah, near what is now St. Francisville, Louisiana. If you remember, that's where I say this house is going to be built. Dun, dun, dun. In 1796, he purchased 600 acres of land and he built his house. And we know it as the Myrtles Plantation, but at this time it was called Laurel Grove. So he was able to build this house in 1 year, but this is the house I'm talking about now is the actual haunted house. Yeah. Just so you know. Because I was talking about another house. It's not that one. This house has 8 rooms. It's very modest looking. It's huge on the outside. It looks really big. So he actually lived there alone until 1799, until he received a pardon from President John Adams for his help in establishing a boundary line between Spain and the U.S. called the Ellicott's Line. So because of the pardon, he was able to get his wife and his 5 kids and brought them back to Louisiana. So they settled into the house together. Everything was going beautiful until...
It wasn't.
Exactly. It gets real sad after this. But they eventually start settling down. And then Bradford was like, I'm gonna help some students with studying law. Because that's what he was good at. So he was like, I'm going to have people come here and like I'll be like their tutor and I'll teach them about the law, basically.
Wait, so he's a lawyer and a contractor?
Yeah.
What the fuck? People just did everything back then.
They really did. I know, right? And so one specific student we're going to be talking about is named Clark Woodruff. And he was one of the students that was at their house. Huh. Okay, so there's a lot of people. We're now going to jump to Clark Woodruff. Okay, so Clark Woodruff was born in Litchfield County, Connecticut. I still feel like Connecticut isn't real, but okay. In August 1791.
Dude, James says the same thing. He was like, name a town in Connecticut. And I'm like, Connecticut?
Litchfield County. County. Yeah, no, it's fake. It's up there with, is Vermont the other fake one?
Probably.
I think so. His father was a farmer, but he didn't want to follow in his footsteps. He was like a rebel. He's like, I'd rather not be a farmer. And so he ended up leaving Connecticut at age 19, and he sought his fortune on the Mississippi, as they all were doing. So he also settled in Bayou Sarah, and he finally arrived there in 1810. So now we've made that connection. How did he end up there? He wanted money. And he was like, I just want to be rich. That's literally all I care about. And so his way of doing this was placing an ad in the St. Francisville newspaper called the Timepiece in summer 1811. It was basically for an academy that he was going to start for students, where he would offer English, grammar, astronomy, geography, composition, penmanship, Greek, and Latin classes.
Wow.
Yeah. It didn't last very long. It only lasted until around 1812, 1814, because he joined the War of 1812.
How old is he by this time?
He was born in 1791. So he was only like 20.
Oh, I was thinking of the wrong person. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, not that guy.
No, I thought
that
it
guy's
was
older.
Bradford. I was like,
not Bradford.
This dude is hella
Woodruff.
old.
I know.
Okay.
There's a lot of... I got confused all the time. There's so many people in this story.
It's literally like a circle.
Yeah. And a lot of them like connect later. And so it's like... So... when the war was over, he returned to St. Francisville to study law. Okay, so there's the connection. And he earned his degree quickly. He ended up falling in love with his teacher's daughter, scandalous, Sarah Matilda. This name is going to be important later, but this is Bradford's daughter.
Ooh.
Yeah. So when I talked about his teacher, I'm talking about Bradford.
Yeah.
And he ended up falling in love with Sarah Matilda. They got married on November 19th, 1817.
Oh.
I know. So he was like 25, 26.
She's probably like 12.
Probably. When David Bradford died, Woodruff actually started managing Laurel Grove for his mother-in-law, Elizabeth. So he kind of took over everything that goes with the property. He expanded the holdings and planted about 650 acres of indigo and cotton.
Oh my God.
He's all about like, how can I make money? So him and Sarah ended up having 3 kids. Their names were Cornelia, James, and Mary. This is also important information. They had 2 daughters and 1 son. Okay. It will come later. I'll explain. Their happiness would not last, as usual. On July 21st, 1820. I forgot how to talk. Okay, sorry. July 21st, 1823, Sarah died from yellow fever.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so there were many epidemics of yellow fever spreading throughout Louisiana. So most families were actually experiencing it. Like, it was rare for a family to not have anyone die or get sick. So Woodruff and Elizabeth continued to take care of the plantation and his kids. So his mother-in-law is there living with them, helping them out. But then it gets worse. Because the next year, on July 15th, 1824, James died from yellow fever, their 1 son.
I mean, I guess multiple people have died on the plot.
Right. Exactly.
So I guess, but like murder.
Yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah.
2 months later, Cornelia ended up dying from yellow fever.
Good Lord, all of his kids?
There's 1 left.
Oh, God.
One child, Octavia, I think is her name. So Woodruff was like, so yeah, my kids keep dying, but can I like buy the farm from you, Elizabeth? And she was like, sure. So he ended up purchasing the farm and basically owned the house now. So Elizabeth Clark, that's Woodruff. I was like, who's Clark? I forgot his first name. Elizabeth Woodruff and Octavia lived together until Elizabeth died in 1830. So then it was just him and his daughter, Octavia.
And Woodruff.
Yeah, Woodruff and Octavia.
Yeah.
So after she died, Woodruff was focused more on law than farming. And so kind of like let things go in that area. And he was just focused on what he really loved to do, law. He and Octavia ended up moving away, and they left the plantation under management of the caretaker that was there. And just because you might want closure on Clark Woodruff, I just kind of summed it up like the end of his life. He served as a judge until 1835, so he really was able to focus on law.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah, he sold Laurel Grove to Ruffin Gray Sterling on January 1st, 1834. That will be the next person we talk about. And he lived until November 25th, 1851. Before he died, he was living in New Orleans with Octavia and her husband.
So she survived infancy.
She did, yeah. And I don't think she ever had kids, but she was just kind of like, I think she was probably scared of having children.
Yeah.
And he also became an auditor of public works. So he got to do his law thing. Great job. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. Now, that story is important because there is like a legend that goes with the death of the kids, which we'll talk about. But the next owner of the house is Ruffin Gray Sterling. So his first name is Ruffin. It's kind of fun. In 1834 is when he bought the house. So the Sterlings were very wealthy, and they owned several plantations in that area. Him and his wife, Mary Catherine Cobb, also an important name, took over all the things belonging to the house, including all of the slaves.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And when Ruffin got this house, he was like, it's kind of old. I think we're going to like spice it up a bit. So they ended up remodeling pretty much everything that was on Laurel Grove.
Dang.
Yeah, so they added a huge central hallway. They added a whole like southern section. They added more to the porch. If you see a picture of the porch, it is massive.
Oh, I like a nice porch.
I know, it is huge. But that's where a murder took place, so we'll get there. Just a spoiler alert. But so he was like, I'm going to remove some of these walls. I'm going to reposition things. We're going to change up these rooms. He also created 4 large rooms. He wanted a men and women's parlor. They each have their own, like fancy.
Bougie.
Yeah. They have a dining room and a game room. So
To play what? Goldfish?
I have no idea. I was wondering the same thing.
Probably poker.
Yeah, poker. That would make sense. Eventually, the dining room becomes another game room, which we'll discuss as well. So he purchased items from Europe. So kind of like the same idea as Bradford, but he was like, we're going to get even newer stuff. Because why not? On the outside, he added a 107-foot long front gallery. He extended their original roof to be higher, and the ceilings were made higher as well. So he was just like, I want bigger and better. The name of the plantation was now changed to the Myrtles because of the trees that were growing there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So now it's no longer Laurel Grove. It is the Myrtles. And then it ends up being the Myrtles Plantation. So 4 years later, Sterling died. He didn't last very long.
Wow.
He died on July 17th, 1854. There's a lot that happens in July at this house. Have you noticed? The
Don't
last
go
like
in
3
July.
people have died in July. Yeah. Maybe
We're
stay
going
away.
July.
Right. I don't know. Maybe that's when it's spookiest. But he actually ended up dying of tuberculosis.
Ooh.
Yeah. That does not sound very exciting.
No fever than TB. I don't think I want to go there.
Yeah. Many respected his wife, Mary, and they were like impressed by her because she had business ethic of a man. So they're like, yeah, that was like high praise back then. It was like, oh my God, you're like, you can work as hard as a man. Wow. So like they thought she could handle it after he died. And she did. She handled all of the farms that they had by herself for years. She was rocking it. They actually had 9 children together, but only 4 lived old enough to marry. So like a lot of them didn't make it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So there's more kids dying in the house, you know what I'm saying? Their oldest, Lewis, that was their oldest son. He died the same year as his dad. Their daughter's husband was murdered on the front porch of the house after the Civil War, which we'll talk about later. And a lot of their belongings were destroyed by Union soldiers. So, yeah. Because of that happening, their wealth became worthless, kind of with the Confederates and their currency.
Yeah.
And so Mary's investment in her sugar plantations were also ravaged. Like, it was just, all of her shit was falling apart.
Well, yeah, because with slavery ending, they either had to start paying them
Yeah.
or let them go.
Right. But there was one thing that she did not let go, and that was the Myrtles.
Okay.
She was like, I'm going to do what I can to keep this alive, to like take care of the farm area. Like, I'm going to do anything I can, even though like people are trying to destroy it. She didn't want to give up on it. She didn't want to leave the property. She loved this house. And so she stayed there until her death in August 1880.
Damn.
Yeah. Then after her, there's only a couple more people, but William Winter was the husband of the Sterling's daughter, Sarah. And this is the one that gets murdered. So he was also Mary's agent and attorney. Mary basically hired him to kind of keep track of whoever's trying to mess with her. And in return, she let him live at the house. So eventually he could own the house as well. And that was like the deal that they made together. So William married their daughter Sarah in 1852. They had 6 children.
Jesus.
Yeah. Mary, Sarah, they had to name it after them, right? Kate, Ruffin, William, and Francis. Kate died from, I think it was another fever of some sort. And she was only 3 years old. I think it was typhoid, if I remember right.
Dude, imagine all the haunted children running amok.
That's the thing. Like, because there's been so many deaths in this house, especially kids.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's like so spooky. Times were really bad at this point after they lost their daughter. But he was still able to hold on to the Myrtles. He ended up being completely bankrupt by 1867. And so the Myrtles was sold by the U.S. Marshal to the New York Warehouse and Security Company on April 15th, 1868. However, 2 years later, the property was sold back to Sarah because she was the heir of Ruffin Sterling. So because it was in his will, she got the house again. So she ended up getting it back.
Wow.
I bet her mom was so proud. She's like, yeah, my house. In January of 1871, so we're kind of just like skipping and going back and forth. Winter was teaching a Sunday school lesson when he heard someone approach on horseback. So he hears someone coming to his house and he's like, who is it? And so he goes outside to see who it is. And the stranger is like, I have some business with you. And didn't really we don't know the details of it all, but he ended up shooting him on the porch. He collapsed on the porch and died.
Oh my God.
I will tell you a story that people think happened after this later, but that is the truth. That's what's been recorded. There was no outcome of the case that was ever recorded after that. So Winter's killer got away with it.
What?
They had one guy in custody and then they realized he couldn't have done it. But they never actually figured out who killed him.
That's wild.
Yeah. So after Mary Sterling died, the Myrtles was purchased by Stephen Sterling, one of her sons. He owned the house until March 1886, but because the place was too deep in debt, he let it go. So he sold the Myrtles to another guy named Orrin D. Brooks. Brooks kept it until January 1889, and then it was purchased by Harrison Milton Williams. Now, this is another big character in our little story here. So, Harrison Milton Williams was a widower who brought his young son and second wife to the house in 1891. The family ended up growing to a total of 7 children.
Dang.
Their oldest son, Harry, ended up dying because during a storm, he fell into the Mississippi and drowned.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so, after that happened, the property management ended up fully belonging to their son. So this was years later, but I'm kind of skipping ahead. And their son's name is Sergett Minor Williams. So he ended up having the house after them. So I'm going to skip way further into the future because it ended up staying in the Williams family for a very long time. So we're going to move to the 1950s. In the 1950s, the property surrounding the house has been divided among the Williams heirs, but it was also sold to Marjorie Munson, which was an Oklahoma widower. So they actually had, or widow, yeah. So they had the house until the 50s, and then they ended up selling it to this woman, Marjorie. Okay. So this is when Chloe enters the picture. Chloe is the ghost that never existed. So this is the tale that was told. And I'm going to kind of go back and I'm going to explain the story, but there are some characters you'll see kind of jumping back in. So we're going to go back to Woodruff. Apparently, when his wife was pregnant with their 3rd kid, he ended up having an affair with one of the slaves named Chloe. This has never been proven. And even people who knew him were like, he would have never had an affair. Like, he was just very dedicated to his family. So there's no proof of her existing or their affair ever happening. Okay. But the story goes that she complied with his sexual needs so that she wouldn't be sent to the fields, because that was like the worst thing you could do as a slave. Yeah. And she's like, I am not working out there. So she kind of just went along with whatever he wanted, basically. Which I don't blame her. Like, who wants to work outside the whole time, picking cotton? So then, because he got bored, he moved on to a different slave.
Oh.
Yeah. Again, never been proven. But at one point, Chloe was just kind of like, "Ugh, I hate this guy. Like, this guy feels sketchy." And so she began listening in on the couple's private conversations just to see if she could find out more information about them. Mm-hmm. And she was caught once. And so Woodruff actually ordered them to cut her ear off.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, for punishment. So she lost an ear. So because she lost an ear, she started wearing a green turban on her head to hide the scars. Chloe put a small amount of poison in the oldest Woodruff's daughter's birthday cake. So if you remember, he had the 3 kids. Mm-hmm. All of them got sick, except Woodruff, because Woodruff did not eat the cake. So Chloe helped them get over their sickness. But this ended up killing 3 of them. So this killed his wife and then 2 of their kids. So we're going to talk about why that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But there are 2 theories of why she ended up poisoning them. Mm-hmm. One, it could have been revenge, just because she was like, I can't believe you made me do this stuff. I hate being a slave. Mm-hmm. Or it could have been so that he realized her importance when he started giving up on her. She wanted to prove that she was like
devoted.
Yeah. And so because she would get them sick, they would need her help and she would step up to the role. So there's 2 theories as to why she would have poisoned them. I personally think the jealousy one, but it could have been either. I mean, it's not even a true story, but just in case it was. So after this happened and the other slaves heard about it, they ended up hanging Chloe from a nearby tree. Yeah. Her body was later thrown into the river. So the room where they were poisoned in, the dining room, it's never been used again. So I mentioned earlier there was a dining room. They actually ended up making it another game room. So still to this day, if you tour the house, you cannot go in that room because that's where all of it happened. They have it blocked off. Like nobody's been in that room ever since. So, yeah. They just call it a game room.
You would think that would be a huge selling point for people to tour.
I think that's why they do. Because I don't think they can go in, but I think they can like look at it.
The psychology, I get that.
Yeah.
You're like, you can't touch.
Right. I'm guessing people probably touch it. So Chloe is the ghost that people see when they visit. A past owner of the house actually ended up capturing a picture of Chloe and sells this picture in postcards at the actual house. So you can buy a postcard of the picture.
Wow.
She's seen a lot in her green turban, wandering the place at night. So many people who stay there see a woman in a green turban. People have actually woken up to her staring at them from the side of the bed.
That's so weird.
Yeah. However, let's talk about why this story does not make any sense.
Yeah.
Woodruff was known, like I mentioned earlier, he was devoted to his wife. They never found evidence of an affair. Sarah Matilda died of yellow fever, and she wasn't poisoned. They know that for a fact. Mm-hmm. Her kids died 2 years later. It was not the same day. So that's all been like proven. Mm-hmm. The tale would mean that Octavia would have never existed because they mentioned that because I think when she was pregnant with Octavia is when she got poisoned.
Yeah.
But Octavia existed.
Yeah.
And lived a long life.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they're still telling the
Yeah, they are. They're like keeping it going.
Like, how do they handle a situation if there's like a heckler?
I don't know. But
maybe I should be that heckler.
I think it's just kind of like to add to the fun of it because all of the owners pass the story on.
Yeah.
They've spent countless hours checking the property records, just like hoping they can get evidence of something crazy. But there's nothing about this girl.
Yeah.
Nothing. However, I mentioned Marjorie Manson earlier. When she bought the house in the 1950s, she asked about this woman because she saw an older woman wearing like a green turban. And she was like, who is this woman? And she couldn't tell if she was seeing like a ghost or a real person. Mm-hmm. And so she was asking around town and people were like, I've seen her at your house. And so the whole rumor of Chloe kind of began in that time. So people just started kind of creating this story in the 1950s.
It honestly could have been an old woman just like on a walk.
Right? That's probably what it was. And it wasn't even, she wasn't wearing a turban. I forgot. She was wearing a green bonnet. And so they've kind of like switched the story to sound more scary, has to wear a turban to cover her scars instead of just a bonnet. So eventually this story spread so big that it was in books and magazines. There's so many books on the Myrtles because, people hear a story and they want to pass it down. Like we talked about the game of telephone. Ghost hunters were excited when they found out about this. A lot of them didn't even know the story's fake. And I'm sure some people who visit today, still don't know that it's fake.
I want to see if Ghost Adventures went to the house.
I'm sure they have. It's like pretty popular.
I'm gonna look later.
Yeah. So later on, the story kind of changed even crazier. Instead of saying that only 3 of them were poisoned, they were saying that 6 other people also got killed. Apparently, Ruffin Sterling's son Lewis was stabbed to death in the house, but we know he actually died from yellow fever. Again, that's what we've proven in his records. When the Union soldiers came into their house?
Yeah.
They believe that 3 of the soldiers were killed when they invaded. And the reason for this is because they ended up leaving blood stains. So there's this area that I think it was in the 50s. A housekeeper was trying to clean this. It looked like a pool of blood and it was like a body shape. And every time she tried to go over it, she was not able to clean it. But then when she left the room, it disappeared. And so they believe that was the Union soldiers. I don't know how they got to that conclusion, but okay. There was no records of any soldiers getting killed in the house. The only verifiable murder was William Drew Winter, which we talked about, the one that got shot on the porch. They created a whole legend out of this story just to make it sound crazier. It's actually kind of cute. Well, no, it's not cute. I'll explain. So the legend was that after he got shot, he was like crawling and able to move. And so he staggered his way back into the house, climbed the stairs, and saw his wife on the 17th stair, went up there and died in her arms. That was the cute part, kind of. And then died on that step in her arms. So people believe that the footsteps are heard on the 17th step. So when you go into the house, you can hear someone going up the stairs, and then when they get to the 17th step, it's silent, so you don't hear anything. So because that happened, that was someone's experience, they kind of created a whole story out of it.
Oh, I would definitely, since I know the story now, I would be doing EVPs and shit on the porch.
I know, right? That's where it all is. I mean, with all this said, yes, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of legends. There's a lot of fake stories, but I think that kind of goes with any haunted place. People are going to create things. However, I believe, the house is haunted. Like, people have seen things there.
Well, there's so many freaking dead children there.
Right. And I think...
what? How many dead children? Like 10?
Yeah. And because of that, there are going to be some spirits there in that area. There's a lot of people who have stayed there that have accounts of seeing things. Many people have seen the same old woman wearing the green turban. And they believe that, so some people will say she's an old woman, some people will say she's a young slave. So there's kind of 2. But they believe that the old woman wearing the green turban could have existed. And people just started talking about her. Maybe she was like a significant part of the town when the house was first built, or, somewhere in that history.
Yeah.
And so that story kind of passed on, that she was like mysterious looking or something. Owners have seen Chloe appear, then disappear, just in random rooms. And this makes sense. I mean, like we said, the families had enough tragedy and trauma to cause hauntings. There's lots of people, even if Chloe doesn't exist, there's a lot of ghost candidates.
Yeah. So
the things that people hear when they stay, it could be any of those kids. Or it could just be Winter having the time of his life.
I mean, too, if slaves were murdered on the property, I'm sure they're not going to document it because they did not see them as people.
That's true. It could have been slaves.
Like, you never really know unless they find bodies.
Yeah.
And if they're throwing them in the Mississippi, then you're never going to find the body, but like that attachment can still be there. So like with that, it's like, take with a grain of salt. Like, this could be all fabricated because that's what we love to do.
Oh, yeah. Gossip.
We love to gossip. We love to fabricate things. But also with, like, the historical side of it, it could be also that a lot of slaves could have died on property and they were never documented.
Right.
So
definitely. I didn't
mean,
think of that, but that's true.
They're not going to give them graves. They're literally just going to bury them.
Right.
So who knows?
One of the things that many people have seen is actually the grand piano on the first floor playing by itself.
Ooh.
So a lot of times when I know this sounds kind of fun, when you go into the room, it will stop playing. But when you're in a different room, it will play.
That makes me think of Fargo's.
That's what I thought of too. It's like an old-fashioned restaurant here, but they have like a piano where you put a coin in and then it plays by itself. Anyway, cool. Yeah. But it's usually like one key over and over again, which would be like, bruh.
Something real.
I know, right? Oh, when the saints. But yeah, so as soon as someone leaves the room, then it will play again. Like, it's kind of like a little mind game.
Just that one note.
Yeah. So you can stay here. It's probably booked up for like 6 years. I haven't looked, but because it's so popular.
It's probably expensive.
Yeah, I think it was around $200 to $400 a night.
No, thank you.
But it's now just a haunted bed and breakfast. So whoever wants to stay there can stay there. And you can also just tour if you want to.
Oh, cool.
Movies have actually been filmed here because of how spooky it looks, including one called Long Hot Summer, which I've never heard of that movie, but they were doing like a horror movie. And in that movie, they had to move furniture that was in the house kind of to a different area. Mm-hmm. And so they would move it. And then when they would be ready to film, they would leave for a bit. They'd come back and film and all the furniture would be moved back to the original spot. And they kept doing this over and over again. And so they were like, all right, guys, can we film this fast? Because there's ghosts in here. Like, they actually got really scared and they had to leave to film somewhere else. Many employees have quit because of what they've seen. Yeah. One employee ended up seeing Chloe, and Chloe was just, like, screaming in his face. And he was like, get me out of here. And so, like, a few employees have seen shit as well, as usual. That's how it always is. Mm-hmm. But, all in all, it seems like a pretty fun place to stay for a night. And see if you can see Chloe or hear footsteps on the 17th floor.
I feel like at that point, just spend the money and stay for a whole weekend.
Right. But yeah, and apparently they like smell things too. I didn't find any information out about the weird smells.
It just says smells.
Yeah, it's like unusual smells. I'm like, that could be anything, but okay.
Well, it's an old house.
Right. Yeah, that's probably it. But anyway, so that is the Myrtles Plantation. Ooh. Oh, yeah. People also see handprints in the mirror. So they'll see, like, Chloe appear in the mirror, and then, like, she'll disappear, and then handprints will be left by.
I'm surprised there's not, like, a lot more of, like, children.
Right.
Because they try to fabricate that, like, all the kids died, like, these dramatic ways.
Right.
That they can't really have the story of, like, well, this kid is like haunting this place. Is like, well, didn't you say that they died of poison when they're saying that they died
exactly
of this?
Yeah.
So it's like they can't really contradict themselves in that sense.
I think it's like spooky because it's like, what's the truth? Like, what actually happened? Who are these ghosts? You know, who's Chloe?
We'll never know, which is so frustrating.
I know,
because documentation just like they only documented what they wanted. Mm-hmm. So that's why, like, I am 100% convinced that there are probably dead slaves on that property that they never recorded.
Chloe could have been real.
Yeah.
Like, that. I think that story could have been real, and, like, they may not catch him in an affair.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way to prove that he wasn't having an affair.
I mean, like, who came up with that? Like, she could have honestly, like, done something wrong or, like, tried to escape, and that could have, like, like gave her a warning, because that's what they would do a lot of times. They would give you warnings by like cutting fingers off, cutting your ears off.
Yeah.
That's what they actually did, is that they would take your body parts first. And then if you kept being bad, then that's when they would kill you. They would lynch you.
Crazy. Maybe like the poisonings never happened, because that's kind of like, we know that didn't happen. But like, yeah, probably the ear being cut off happened. So she had to wear the turban. And then she probably died on the property. Like, I'm sure there is some truth to this girl. Like, she has to be real.
Yeah.
And then they see an old woman because of someone else who's died there. Like, the wives who've died there, you know? Probably Elizabeth. She loved that house.
Honestly.
Anyway, that's the Myrtles Plantation.
Ooh. Look at us making assumptions.
Yeah, go look at pictures of it. It's spooky looking.
Yeah, it'd be cool because I definitely want to get down to New Orleans because I haven't been to...
Jesus.
Dude, we get that all the time.
That's so annoying.
But, yeah, I definitely want to hit, like, New Orleans, kind of explore more of Louisiana, just because I haven't really, like, seen the South. Like, I don't want to go to Alabama or, like, Mississippi or stuff.
There's just a lot of history in those areas, which is really cool.
Exactly, and it's such devastating history. Right. But, like, it's also important to acknowledge yourself about that history.
You can't pretend it doesn't exist.
Exactly, and that's what they're fucking trying to do now. And it's just like, no, that's not how it works.
Right.
It's like, you better believe I'm going to be teaching my children about all this shit. And then they're going to tell their friends, and their friends are going to be like, Mom, what is this? And they're probably going to yell at me.
And that's okay.
They're going to be like, Cleopatra was incest?
That's okay. When I taught about Buddhism,
yeah,
because we were doing like Japanese feudalism, I had a parent complain that I was teaching religions. I was like, I was just educating your child.
Yeah, it's okay to teach about Christianity.
I know, right? They can go to an assembly and talk about God, and I'm like, how's that okay? Literally. Anyway, so that's American culture for you. Okay, well,
I can hate it here.
Get us out, please. Send help now. Thank you. I want to move to Canada still.
All right. Where can you find us?
You can find us at Myrtles Plantation. Just kidding. You can find us oh my God, Jesus Christ. you put a microphone in front of me and I forget how to talk.
Literally.
You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube at Historia the Podcast, and you can email us at historiathepodcast@gmail.com. Oh. So Christmas is coming up. What? Sort of. November's coming up. Whatever requests you have, hit us up.
I could do the whole history about Hallmark.
Wait. Let's do that. All right.
It's good and bad.
Get out of here, everyone. Just kidding. That was so cheesy.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.